What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. As always, thanks for tuning in. So I got some breaking news here from the Gateway Pundit, hat tip to Jim Hoft. Colorado Democrat judge dismisses lawsuit to exclude Trump from the 2024 ballot. Boom. Yeah, this is big. So in a significant ruling, a Colorado judge overseeing a lawsuit aimed at removing former President Donald J. Trump's name from the 2024 presidential ballot has rejected the challenge. The judge has further instructed the Secretary of State to ensure that Trump's name appears on the 2024 election ballot. In September, a coalition of 6 Republicans and unaffiliated Colorado voters, including former state and federal officials, filed a lawsuit seeking to disqualify former President Trump from appearing on the state's 2024 presidential ballot. Wait a minute, so are you telling me that the 6 officials, the 6 plaintiffs, are former state and federal officials that are trying to remove our candidate from the ballot? Are these people nuts? These people truly are nuts, ain't they? I mean, they don't realize, and it's just like everything else that they do. They never realize the unintended consequences of their actions. These are the same people that sit there and say shut down all fossil fuel production and then wonder why there's rolling blackouts. Like they never understand the unintended consequences of their actions. And this is one of them. These people tried to single-handedly destroy our democracy. How did they expect this was going to turn out? Like what is the end goal for these people? I know people don't honestly think that these Trump-deranged lunatics are going to stop by removing Donald Trump off a ballot or by imprisoning Donald Trump. It's not going to stop there. Everybody knows, you know just as well as I do, that you give these people an inch and they will take a mile. If you allow them to ban assault rifles, they will ban every damn gun in the country. They don't stop. You allow same-sex marriage, and here it is. Now we got men competing in women's sports. They never know when to stop. That is the problem with progressivism. And that's exactly what these people are. But what's shocking to me is that it's former state and federal officials. Yeah, granted, they were probably voters. But you mean that it's people that have inside connections with attorney generals and judges, and they know how the system works? So these people honestly wanted to take a sledgehammer to our democratic process. It's just shocking to me. And what's even worse is you have millions of people out there that support it. Not as many as people think. And I'll be honest, I know a few Democrat Biden voters, and they are not cool with this whole removing Donald Trump from the ballot, because they know just as well as I do it's not going to stop there. They know that if Democrats can do it to a Republican, then Republicans can just as easily do it to Democrats. And this is the problem that we face. This is something Alan Dershowitz said. Think of the chaos this would create in our elections. And not only that, but you're talking about allegations of an insurrection, not even charged or even convicted of an insurrection. So these people came out, accused Donald Trump of inciting an insurrection, violating the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, and then just removing him from the ballot. Like, it's insane. Wasn't charged, wasn't convicted, but yet they can try and remove him from the ballot? No way. That's going to cause mass chaos. That would it would destroy our democracy, period. Our democracy would be done, dead, gone, forever. So the plaintiffs are, we're going to name some names here. So the plaintiffs are Norma Anderson, Michelle Priola, Claudine Camarada, Krista Caffer, Kathy Wright, and Christopher Castillion. So we're talking about 6 people. 6 people tried to remove the leading Republican candidate off the ballot in the state of Colorado. And it wasn't going to stop there, because this was just a pre-trial. They have these lawsuits in all blue states all across the country. And it was going to be like a domino effect. Once they got it through in Colorado, then Michigan was going to be next, Wisconsin. But now this sets precedent. So it's going to be really tough for these other judges to do this. This is huge. This is a big story. So the case argues that Trump violated Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which disqualifies any individual from holding federal office if they have, quote, engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States. So according to the lawsuit, and I have the lawsuit right here in front of me, Donald Trump tried to overthrow the results of the 2020 presidential election. Before the election, he made plans to cast doubt on and undermine confidence in our nation's election infrastructure. After the election, he knowingly sought to subvert our Constitution and system of elections through a sustained campaign of lies. His efforts culminated on January 6, 2021, when he incited, exacerbated, and otherwise engaged in a violent insurrection at the United States Capitol by a mob who believed they were following his orders and refused to protect the Capitol or call off the mob for nearly 3 hours as the attack unfolded.
Ho, ho, ho! Fiction can be fun, but I find the reference section much more enlightening.
These people got nothing. This is literally a bunch of emotional ranting. This is how far their Trump derangement syndrome has gone. They manufacture these events in their mind, and then they just play on them. So, for instance, in the lawsuit, it says before the election, he made plans to cast doubt on and undermine confidence in our nation's election infrastructure. Well, what do you think Democrats are doing when they sit there and kick ballot counters out of the room and count ballots when nobody's there? Where they stuff pizza boxes in the windows? Or when they think of all the stuff that we've seen during the 2020 election that was all done by Democrats. You don't think that casts any doubt in the confidence in our election systems? I mean, come on here, man. All right, so back to the article here. So in October, a Democrat judge rejected Trump's effort to shut down the lawsuit, seeking to block him from the 2024 presidential ballot. Judge Wallace ripped Trump's arguments against the lawsuit. He said, quote, if the party, without any oversight, can choose its preferred candidate, then it could theoretically nominate anyone, regardless of their age, citizenship, residency, she wrote. Such an interpretation is absurd. The Constitution and its requirements for eligibility are not suggestions, left to the political parties to determine their sole discretion. The Trump campaign blasted the Democrat judge in response to her latest ruling, and they said this, quote, she is going against the clear weight of legal authority. We are confident the rule of law will prevail, and this decision will be reversed, whether at the Colorado Supreme Court or at the U.S. Supreme Court. A Trump campaign spokesperson said, to keep the leading candidate for president of the United States off the ballot is simply wrong and un-American. I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And, this is the problem with these judges. It's this mind virus. I already wrote a letter to the Supreme Court. And in that letter, in not so many words, and I'm paraphrasing here, I actually have the letter that I wrote. I think I posted it on one of my shows or on TikTok. I posted it on social media because I want other people to write a letter to them too and just explain your feelings. But in that letter, I told them that this is some type of mind virus. This Trump derangement syndrome, this is a real thing. There is no doubt about it. It needs to be on the next, I think it's the MDS. It needs to be on the next diagnosis book. I think it's MDS-6, which is going to be coming out. Because Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing. And we have millions of people that are suffering from it. And not just regular citizens, but you have judges, attorney generals, prosecutors, intel agents, intel agent leaders. You have this mind virus that has been infecting every aspect of our government and its institutions for I don't know how long, 9 years now? We going on 9 years, 10 years? That's what's wrong. That's what's happening. If these people have been so convinced by the media, by their own confirmation bias for the last 8 years that Donald Trump is the next coming Hitler, that they're willing to do anything to keep him from becoming president. Think about it. What would you do if you thought Hitler was running for president right now? You'd probably do everything you could, right? Well, that's how these people feel. But it's not because he's actually Hitler. It's not because he's ever done anything comparable to Hitler. But it's because that is what the media has been, that is the narrative the media has been drumming up for the last 8 years, 9 years. You guys seen it. You guys, we talked about it on the show all the time. How the media has repeated lie after lie after lie. Trump is worse than Hitler. Trump is compared to Pol Pot. Trump is the next coming Mussolini. Like, they say this stuff to this day. These people, I just watched audio from Joe Amica from the Morning Blow show where they say the same stuff, that the guy is like Hitler. It doesn't make any sense. He's already been president for 4 years. Nobody lost any freedoms. In fact, people were more free during the Trump administration than they are during the Biden administration. So earlier this month, the radical leftist attorneys in Colorado opened their arguments to toss President Trump from the ballot in that state. During their opening remarks, the far-left attorneys shared 2 clips of President Trump's speech at the Ellipse to 1 million supporters on January 6, 2021. But this is what's crazy. They omitted the part where President Trump told his supporters to be peaceful. Yes, this was bizarre to me. You want to talk about Soviet-era Nazi Germany-like Pravda media. What we're watching right now coming from media outlets like 60 Minutes and all these prosecutors and attorney generals and how they're editing his speech when he told his supporters to march peacefully and patriotically. Why do that? Well, they're doing that so that they can influence the public opinion, which is exactly what Hitler did back in East Germany in the 1930s. It's exactly what Stalin did. They would use the media and then omit key pieces of audio. In some cases, they wouldn't report on it at all, but they most definitely owned the media, and then the media would influence the public opinion. And this is exactly what places like 60 Minutes, CNN, MSNBC, the Pravda media is doing the same thing. They were taking out key parts of his speech so that people didn't hear him say peacefully and patriotically. Why? Because you can't very well be an insurrectionist or incite an insurrection when you're telling the supporters to march peacefully and patriotically. It's kind of hard. And not just that, but it's kind of hard to incite an insurrection when you requested 10,000 National Guard troops and you were denied by the mayor. So they leave that part out as well. No media outlets mention Donald Trump requesting the National Guard troops. No, they don't mention anything about it, when in reality, that's exactly what happened. And they were denied by Mayor Bowser 2 days up before January 6th. So that means you could argue, and that is exactly the argument that I'm making, is that January 6th never would have happened if not for the incompetency, at least, and straight up fraud, at most, by Nancy Pelosi, the mayor, and Mitch McConnell. They are responsible for the security of the Capitol. And you notice who hasn't been questioned in any of the January 6th trials, in any of the January 6th committee hearings? Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, Mayor Bowser. We did a show on Yogananda Pittman, who was the lead Capitol Chief Intel agent who had vital intel that said there was going to be violence that day, and she sat on it. She didn't give it to anybody. She didn't give it to Steve Sund. She didn't give it to, what's his name? I can't even remember his name. It's Johnson. But she didn't give it to the lead people that would have to have it. So she deliberately sat on the intel, and because of that, nobody was prepared for what was getting ready to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a lot of stuff that has come out of January 6th that just does not make sense. And we're not getting any transparency from anywhere. I just watched a video clip where you had random people in a bush that was dressing into Trump gear. So these people were dressed all in black, just random people putting on Trump MAGA gear underneath a bush, in a bush, right? Putting a shirt on, putting pants on, putting a hat on. So it's like you ask yourself, okay, well, what's the reason for that? Who are those people? How much audio have we seen from body cams of Capitol police officers or the Metropolitan Police actually inciting the riot, actually part of the Capitol, the J6 riot, helping people upstairs, cheering, saying, go, go, go. Like, there is so much stuff that doesn't make sense about January 6th, and we have no answers. None. Even though there was millions of dollars spent on a J6 committee, but that committee was the biggest fraud ever portrayed on the American people. That was the real show trial of our time, was the J6 Select Committee. That's exactly what it was. They had an NBC producer insert audio for the J6 footage to make it more dramatically appealing. So you had a TV producer actually editing and cutting the footage for J6 for that committee so that it would seem more dramatic than what it was. Not to mention, the entire damn committee, you could argue, is unconstitutional to begin with, because the Republican committee members that were supposed to be on that committee, that were nominated to be on that committee, Nancy Pelosi rejected. She rejected them and then selected her own Republicans. And who were those Republicans? Oh, they just happened to be Republicans that hated Donald Trump the most. They hated Trump on a cellular level. That was Adam Kissinger and Dizzy Liz Cheney. And so, how was that even possible? How can you reject Republicans that were nominated to sit on that committee and then hand select your own Republicans? The whole damn thing was a giant show trial. It was a show trial so that they can get exactly what they're doing now, to get Jack Smith, a rogue prosecutor, a rogue special counsel, to indict Donald Trump using that J6 committee, using the January 6th report. That report was essentially a taxpayer-funded, democracy-destroying election interference campaign, because they used that report to do exactly what they're doing now, to get Jack Smith, so Jack Smith can indict Donald Trump. So they got all of 2020, all of 2021, and then I think all of 2022 before the committee ended. So here it is, Jack Smith and the government get 3 years to build a case, and then they indict Donald Trump and say, oh yeah, we're going to trial in 6 months, so be ready. It's like, what? How is that even fair? Like, the right to a speedy trial is not for the government, it's for us, it's for the citizens. And they sit there and say, oh, well, the American people have a right to a speedy trial. No, Donald Trump has a right to the speedy trial. Like, they got their stuff all jacked up, man. All of it. We are seeing some of the craziest stuff I've ever seen in my lifetime, and I talk to 90-year-olds, even a 100-year-old, that says he's never seen anything like this ever in his life. He's went through Nixon, he's went through all the scandals. He's never seen anything like what we're seeing right now from our government institutions. As far as the FBI intel agents, as far as the weaponization of our government institutions in order to prevent a presidential candidate from being on the ballot? What? You got 4 indictments against a former president of the United States? Like, I mean, you got judges that you got a Democrat, radical leftist, Obama-appointed judge that put a gag order on a Republican candidate that's running for president. Not just any candidate, but the leading candidate. Put a gag order on him. So we can't talk about anything. This is some of the most egregious stuff. Like, you wouldn't even be able to find this out of like a George Orwell novel. That's how Soviet-esque all this stuff is. It is truly incredible. And so, enough of my rant. So, to go back to the article, it's just incredible how these 6 people actually thought that they were going to be able to remove the Republican Party's lead candidate from the ballot. Nothing screams democracy more than a coalition of Democrats removing the Republican candidate off the ballot. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there. Like, we are in bizarro world. This stuff doesn't even make sense. We are like in the twilight zone. So in an effort to remove Trump from the ballot, D.C. Metropolitan Police Officer Danny Hodges testified under oath about the injuries he sustained on January 6. In previous testimony before House January 6 committee, Hodges said he continues to be haunted by the events on January 6 after he was pinned in a doorway at the Capitol. Hodges told the Colorado court that he experienced pain and bruising. Well, I think they got that word mixed up. So Hodges told the Colorado court that he experienced pain and bruising around his body and on his skull and hand. Quote, I had a contusion on my head from being struck with my own baton, which I believe resulted in concussion as I experienced a headache for 2 weeks after the fact. I had lacerations on the face, bleeding from the mouth, and pain in my eye from someone attempting to gouge my eye out, Hodges said. However, as Julie Kelly noted, photos posted by Officer Hodges on Facebook on January 7th, just 1 day after the January 6th Capitol protest, tells a very different story. And I got a tweet here from Julie Kelly. She says, here are the photos he posted on Facebook 1 day after the J6 protest. No swollen hand, no large contusions on his head, no evidence of an attempt to gouge out his eye. Hodges, like Fanone, Gunnell, and Dunn, lied about his injuries. Hodges also falsely claimed police had been, quote, seizing guns all day, and believed protesters were better armed than cops in full riot gear. What? How were these people able to lie like this and get away with it? Under oath? This is why these people continue to push this false narrative, this entire psyop, is because nobody's being held accountable for lying under oath. How can you have pictures of this guy, clear pictures a day after the event? He's taking pictures of himself in a mirror and selfies. No lacerations to his head. No evidence of someone trying to gouge his eye out. I mean, the guy looks perfectly fine other than a bruised lip where it looks like that maybe his tooth bit down on his lip. But other than that, this guy looks perfectly fine. But yet he goes on the stand and testifies that people were trying to gouge his eye out and that he had lacerations on his skull and contusions. But there's nothing wrong with this guy. But yet he can say that under oath and nothing happens to him. It's almost like they want these officers to come up and make this insane, exaggerated testimony so that they can use it. Like, so is any of these J6 officers that were there that are clearly lying about their condition a day after the riot, are they going to be held accountable for lying under oath? Probably not. Probably not. In fact, they're probably going to be they're probably championed as a hero, and I'm sure they probably got 6 months off, maybe even a year from their injuries. Who knows? Maybe they have a lawsuit. Maybe the taxpayers funded them, paid off their house or something. Who knows? But to sit here and make false claims like this to put on a show so that the J6 committee and the Democrats can use it to try and remove Donald Trump from the ballot is just, it's disgusting. It's disgraceful. And these people should be held accountable. So on the second day of the hearing, the petitioner's attorney called Professor William Banks from Syracuse University to testify about the president's authority over the National Guard regarding the U.S. Capitol. While Mockingbird outlets are quick to, quote, fact-check whether or not President Trump authorized the deployment of the National Guard, Kash Patel, who is the chief of staff to then acting Secretary of Defense Chris Miller, tells a different story. Patel writes, quote, 2 days before the Capitol breach on January 6, 2021, then President Donald Trump personally authorized the use of up to 20,000 National Guardsmen to support local law enforcement, if requested. But no request, as required by law, came from the Capitol Police or from Mayor Muriel Bowser, says Kash Patel, who was serving as chief of staff to the Department of Defense at the time. So on January 5th, 2021, Mayor Bowser sent a letter addressed to then acting Attorney General Jeff Rosen, Secretary of the Army Ryan McCarthy, and Acting Secretary of Defense Chris Miller, assuring them that, quote, the Metropolitan Police Department is prepared for this week's First Amendment activities and that they have coordinated with federal agencies, namely the U.S. Park Police, U.S. Capitol Police, and U.S. Secret Service. Despite Professor Banks' testimony in this absurd hearing to remove the Republican frontrunner for president from the ballot without any convictions that would qualify such removal, there is clear evidence that President Trump acted as he should. He authorized the National Guard if requested. Mayor Bowser made it perfectly clear through precedent and her own words that she did not want extra federal assistance, and the SSAA and the HSAA were slow to respond to requests from Chief Sund for support from the National Guard. Yes, we played this audio. Steve Sund testified under oath in front of a hearing that he was not prepared for this. Okay, he was not given any intel that was being held by Yogananda Pittman, who was the chief intel officer for the Capitol Police. Like I said, she sat on this intel and didn't share it with anybody. Certainly not the people that needed it. Either person. So there was Steve Sund, who was the chief of Capitol Police, who definitely should have got that intel. And there was Tariq Johnson, who we also did a show about, who said he didn't get the intel. And he was directly responsible in overseeing the entire operation on the certification of the votes that day, as far as the Capitol Police were concerned. Neither one of these people who should have had this intel received any intel. So it makes you wonder, was Yogananda Pittman sitting on this intel? Did anybody question her? Has she been put under oath to testify about what she knows? Has Nancy Pelosi been questioned about what she knows? How about Mitch McConnell? What do these people know, and when did they know it? That's what the American people want to get answers to. We deserve to know. It certainly would answer a lot of questions. But it's never going to happen. Because it's all part of a plan, folks. It's one gigantic psyop and an orchestrated tactic to kneecap Donald Trump and try and remove him from the presidential ballot in 2024. Why? Because they know he's going to win. So on the fourth day of the lawsuit aimed at barring former President Donald Trump from the 2024 ballot in Colorado, Congressman Ken Buck was called to testify by Trump's defense team. Congressman Ken Buck was tasked with discrediting the January 6th committee's report which alleges Trump's involvement in an insurrection. Buck provided testimony remotely from his office in Washington, D.C. Buck asserted that the committee's approach was biased against Trump and motivated by a political vendetta. Buck highlighted its failures to cross-examine certain witnesses, challenge specific pieces of evidence, and subpoena particular documents that could have negated allegations against Trump. Quote, "It's like going into a courtroom as a prosecutor, not having a defense counsel or a defendant. I think in order to be able to judge someone's culpability, you've got to be able to hear both sides of the story, and in this case, there was not another side," Buck said. Buck's primary testimony focused solely on his experiences from the January 6th and his perspectives on the report from the January 6th committee, according to Channel 9 News. Yeah. So how are you able to have this? Like I said, it's a show trial. That's all it was. There was no cross-examination. No Republicans up there were willing to ask any hard questions. Why? Because they wanted to get rid of Donald Trump just as much as Nancy Pelosi, the Democrats. That's exactly why Nancy Pelosi picked him. They couldn't have someone like Jim Jordan or Thomas Massey or Mike Johnson up in that committee, because they know that all their witnesses would have got destroyed, and this gigantic J6 committee would have been a giant wash. It would have been a waste of time. They never would have got their J6 report, which they're using now to indict Donald Trump. They never would have got it if there were actually Republicans up there that didn't want to see Donald Trump gone as much as Nancy did. So it's like it was all one gigantic show trial. A Soviet-style show trial. That's what that was. And so, hats off to Ken Buck for as much as I hate this guy. Well, I guess hate's kind of a strong word. But my hat's off to Ken Buck for actually coming out and just telling the truth, man. This is something this is a big problem that we have in our Congress today. This is a big problem that we have in our society today, is Democrats do not value the truth. Truth is like a obscure thing. They'll only use it or accept it if it benefits their cause. If you actually value truth, this is why I can't take any of these people seriously. So when these people try to lecture me about honesty, I just sit there and say, look, I'm not going to be lectured by somebody that says men can give birth. I'm not going to do it. It's clear and obvious these people don't value any semblance of truth. So why should we be lectured by people that think men can give birth and men are women and women are men? I don't think so. I'm not going to be lectured by somebody that clearly is not living in reality. So hats off to Ken Buck for actually making this testimony. It's clear and obvious what the J6 committee was for. The entire damn narrative is falling apart, folks. Why? Because it's all fake. And it's a lot harder to build on a lie than it is just to tell the truth. This is common wisdom that we've been given since we were kids. It's hard to lie. It's hard to continue lying because we all know that when you lie about something, you got to keep lying. And that lie, you have to lie about that lie. Then a lie turns into another lie. Then a lie turns into another lie. And the next thing you know, eventually, the truth comes out. Eventually, it's just a matter of time. You can't continue a lie forever. But what they're hoping is that their lie, this giant psyop, would at least carry on long enough to get past the 2024 election. All this, folks, I say this all the time. You know this as well as I do. All of this is all intended to kneecap Donald Trump and influence a federal election. That is all this is. It's one gigantic orchestrated psyop in order to sway the 2024 election. That's what it's for. They know all these cases are all going to get slapped down. Any one of them that make it to the Supreme Court of the United States is going to get slapped down. That is why they are stretching this. Like, do Democrats not connect the dots on all these cases? All these cases are brought forth by either Democrat attorney generals, Democrat prosecutors, or Democrat special counsels in Democrat states with Democrat judges, with most likely a Democrat jury. Like, nobody connects the dots there. I mean, I can't be the only one that finds that a little odd, maybe, but they don't see that. The lack of self-awareness in the Democrat Party right now is breathtaking. And it's not because they don't want to, it's because they can't. The moment these people come out and admit that, yeah, maybe Donald Trump isn't like this crook that we were made to believe, then it's over. The last 9 years of their life has been one gigantic lie, and they got tricked. Nobody likes to admit when they were wrong. And what we have here is a massive portion of our population that do not want to admit when they're wrong. All I'm going to say is maybe when you're investigating somebody 5,000 times, spending millions of dollars, using every single government institution and tool and weapon in the arsenal against one person, and you can't find anything, maybe it's because there's nothing there. I'm just going to throw that out there. That may be a possibility. But will these people ever come out and admit that? No. And so this is big news. Big news. Democrat judge in Colorado slaps down the lawsuit that was trying to remove Donald Trump from the 2024 ballot. And it's not going to be easy for them from here on out. So you know as well as I do, these people are not going to give up. They're not, and I wouldn't be surprised if Jack Smith comes out with superseding charges against Donald Trump for insurrection. I think he was holding that back. This is what I think. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but what I think is going to happen is because Donald Trump was never charged with insurrection, it's kind of hard to remove him from a ballot that requires he be charged for an insurrection. So I think Jack Smith is going to use a superseding indictment in the coming weeks, maybe even days, maybe months, charging him with insurrection. And then these lawyers are going to go back, they're going to file another lawsuit, and then they're going to remove him from the ballot right before the election so that there is no time for these cases to get in front of the United States Supreme Court. That's what it's a time game now. They have to strategically time all these cases out. I don't know the technical aspects of it and how all of this works because I'm not an attorney, but I'm just telling you that's what I think they're trying to do. They're trying to time all these things out perfect. You got Letitia James, or you got Big Fannie Willis in Georgia that is asking the judge for the trial to be conducted 3 months before the election. What? 3 months before an election? Like, folks, there is no statute of limitations on any of these cases. There is no reason for any of these cases to be brought during an election period. All you are doing is interfering in an election and attempting to disenfranchise millions of voters. Why cannot any of these people be charged with conspiring to violate people's rights, their voting rights? Is that not exactly what they're doing? Between Jack Smith, Merrick Garland, Fannie Willis, Alvin Bragg, all these judges all coordinating with one another, trying to time this out perfect, I would really like to know the internal communications for this coordination. Like, if they are coordinating all this, then wouldn't that make it a giant conspiracy to violate people's rights by interfering in their elections? So the exact same thing that Fannie Willis is charging Donald Trump for down in Georgia is exactly what these people should be charged with. These people are the masters of projection. Everything that they accuse Donald Trump of doing, they themselves have done, are currently doing, or planning on doing in the future. They are the masters at projection. So, big news. I'm glad to hear this. I think Jack Smith is probably going to bring superseding indictments to try and charge Trump with the insurrection. I just don't think you're going to be able to do it. Why? Because it's kind of hard, like I said, it's kind of hard to charge someone with an insurrection when they're requesting National Guard troops, which you now have testimony from Kash Patel that the J6 committee tried to cover up, saying that Donald Trump requested it. So you got witnesses that were there. You got documents that were there saying that he requested it. And in his speech, he told his supporters to march peacefully and patriotically. No guns were found. You have Tariq Johnson, which was the lead Capitol Police officer that was overseeing the entire operation, even said if these protesters wanted to take over the Capitol that day, they could have, because they were way outnumbered. The Capitol Police were outnumbered like 100-1. So he said if these people were actually trying to conduct an insurrection and take over the Capitol, they could have, but they didn't. And now with Mike Johnson coming out, just releasing 40,000 hours of J6 footage, you're going to start seeing a lot of stuff doesn't add up. This just puts a stake into the heart of the January 6th being an insurrection narrative. Because on that footage, you see a ton of protesters walking around with police, checking stuff out, peacefully, chilling. You got audio of protesters saying, don't harm the police. Yes, were there violent people there that day? Were there police officers that got assaulted? Of course. And those are the people that need to pay the price. I don't see anybody trying to defend those people. If they were violent towards police, of course, yes, they need to pay the price. But you have the Department of Justice on the country's largest manhunt in DOJ history, arresting thousands of protesters and locking them up in prison for years. For, in some cases, walking into the Capitol, taking footage and walking out. Like, this is insane. Their narrative is falling apart. And by this judge squashing this lawsuit of Democrats trying to remove Donald Trump off the ballot, sends a pretty big sign to the other judges and other would-be plaintiffs trying to remove Donald Trump off the ballot in other states. So we're going to be doing another episode here in just a minute, so make sure you tune in for that. Derek Chauvin appeals murder conviction of George Floyd. Very interesting stuff. I've been reading into this for a while now. I meant to do a show about it back in the day, but since this article just came out and he has officially appealed the conviction, I figured we might as well just talk about it now. So make sure you tune into that episode. I'm going to be releasing that here in a few hours. And as always, I want you guys to have a good day. Have a great week. God bless you, and God bless America. You guys have a good day. Bye-bye.